Chapter 1. You felt it the moment she pulled back. The tone changed before the words did. The space between replies stretched just enough to make you aware of it. You told yourself not to overthink it, but your body already knew something shifted. And the first instinct was to lean in, to ask what's wrong, to send something funny, to remind her you're still here. Because that's what most men do when they sense distance. They move closer. It feels logical at first. If she's drifting, close the gap. If she's unsure, reassure her. If she's quiet, speak louder. And the crazy part is, you probably believe that makes you mature, open, honest. But what it actually does, slowly and without you noticing, is remove the very thing that makes someone miss you in the first place. Because you can't miss what never leaves the room. Most men think making a woman miss them is about a trick. Timing texts, playing hard to get, posting strategically. But missing someone isn't triggered by games, it's triggered by absence. And not dramatic absence, not ghosting, not slamming doors, a quiet absence. The kind that happens when you stop chasing a response and start respecting reality. You've probably experienced the reverse, the woman you weren't sure about, the one you thought was just an option. Then one day she stopped responding the same way. She wasn't rude, she wasn't emotional, she just moved differently. And suddenly you noticed her more, not because she begged for attention, because she removed easy access to it. The space made you aware of what was there before. Women operate on the same emotional mechanics. When you are constantly present, constantly available, constantly trying to clarify your value, you remove tension. Tension is what makes the mind wander back. Tension is what creates curiosity. Without it, you become familiar. And familiarity without investment doesn't create longing. It creates comfort. And comfort doesn't always lead to missing someone. The uncomfortable truth is this. The more you try to make her see your value, the less she feels it. Value isn't explained. It's experienced. And experience requires contrast. If she never feels what it's like without you, she can't measure your presence. If you stay in place, hoping she'll wake up, you're giving her certainty without requiring commitment. Certainty without commitment never produces desire. There's a quiet shift that happens when you stop trying to convince her, when you stop sending follow-ups, when you stop explaining your intentions, when you stop asking where this is going. It feels unnatural at first. Your mind wants to reach, your fingers want to type, your ego wants reassurance. But if you sit with it instead of reacting, something changes. You start feeling grounded instead of anxious. And that grounded energy changes the entire dynamic. You don't disappear to punish her. You disappear to realign yourself. That's the difference most men don't understand. When absence is rooted in bitterness, it feels petty. When absence is rooted in self-respect, it feels powerful. Women can feel the difference immediately. One feels like a tactic, the other feels like a boundary. Think about how you move when you know you're not going to chase someone. You stand differently. You talk differently. You don't overshare. You don't rush vulnerability. You let the interaction breathe. That breathing room creates space for her mind to fill in the blanks. And the human mind hates unanswered space. It wanders back to what felt unfinished. You might be thinking, what if she really isn't interested? What if she doesn't care? And that's exactly the point. If she truly doesn't care, your chasing won't change that. It will only confirm that you're still available regardless of her effort. But if there's even a fraction of curiosity, the moment you step back calmly, that curiosity has room to grow. You're not forcing a reaction. You're allowing one. There's a story I've seen play out more times than I can count. A man meets a woman and invests quickly. He texts consistently, plans dates, communicates clearly. She enjoys the attention, but never quite matches it. He feels it, but ignores it. Then one day, instead of asking for more, he simply slows down. Not cold, not angry, just less available. He goes back to his routine, stops initiating every conversation, stops overcompensating. Within weeks, she's reaching out more than he is, not because he manipulated her, because she finally felt the space where his effort used to be. Missing someone doesn't come from pressure, it comes from contrast, from noticing the shift in rhythm. When you're always around emotionally, she adapts to that frequency. When that frequency lowers, she becomes aware of it. And awareness is the beginning of missing. If this is making you uncomfortable, sit with that discomfort. It probably means you've been operating from fear of loss instead of confidence in your presence. Tap like if you've ever chased clarity when you should have chosen silence, not as a performance, as a moment of honesty with yourself. Because this isn't about making someone regret you. It's about understanding that presence without selectivity never creates longing. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into the internal posture that makes absence powerful instead of desperate. Because if you don't change that posture, stepping back will feel like a stunt instead of a shift. Chapter 2. You don't actually want her to miss you because you're gone. You want her to miss you because you mattered. And that distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. If you disappear out of frustration, it feels like withdrawal. If you step back from alignment, it feels like gravity. One is reactive, the other is intentional. Women are sensitive to intention in ways most men don't realize. The internal posture is what makes absence powerful. If you step back while constantly checking your phone, refreshing her stories, wondering if she noticed, you're not really gone. You're still emotionally present. That emotional tether cancels the effect. You have to actually redirect your focus, not fake it, not post strategically, redirect it. Back into your routine, back into your body, back into your work, back into your own center. Most men struggle here because they've unconsciously made her response the scoreboard. If she texts, they feel relief. If she doesn't, they feel rejected. That dependence creates urgency. And urgency leaks through even when you try to mask it. To make someone miss you, you have to stop measuring yourself against their reactions. You have to become steady whether she leans in or pulls away. There's a strange calm that settles in when you genuinely accept that you might lose her. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet way. You stop bargaining internally. You stop rehearsing conversations. You stop fantasizing about fixing it. That acceptance removes pressure from your energy. And when pressure drops, attraction can re-emerge, because now you're not suffocating the connection with fear. Women don't miss men who orbit them. They miss men who move. If your life looks paused while you wait for her, there's nothing to miss. But if she sees you continuing without her validation, continuing without chasing her reassurance, something shifts. She realizes you're not anchored to her uncertainty. That realization creates space for curiosity. Curiosity is the seed of missing someone, not guilt, not manipulation. Curiosity. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're talking to, whether she misjudged you, whether you're slipping out of reach. And that wondering doesn't happen because you announced it. It happens because you stopped narrating your availability. You've probably seen this dynamic from the other side. The person who stopped oversharing. The one who used to text you updates and suddenly didn't. The one who seemed slightly out of reach without being cold. That shift made you pay attention, not because they begged for it, because they removed automatic access. The hardest part is resisting the urge to fill the silence. Silence feels heavy when you're used to constant contact. Your brain tells you to break it, to check in, to just see. But every time you interrupt that silence prematurely, you reset the dynamic. You teach her that you won't hold your ground. And holding your ground isn't about ego. It's about self-regulation. There's also a misconception that you need to make her jealous. That's surface-level thinking. Jealousy might spark a reaction, but it rarely builds respect. Respect grows when your absence feels earned, not staged. When she senses that you stepped back because alignment shifted, not because you're playing chess with her emotions. You don't need to block her. You don't need to unfollow her dramatically. You don't need to announce you're done. You just need to stop offering energy where it's not reciprocated. That quiet retraction feels mature, and maturity carries weight. Women miss men who feel stable, not men who feel volatile. If she was never interested, nothing you do will manufacture longing. And that's okay. The goal isn't universal attraction. The goal is to create a dynamic where your presence has value. When you operate from self-respect instead of anxiety, even rejection feels different. It feels clean. And clean exits are often more memorable than messy pursuits. There's one more layer here that most men overlook. When you stop chasing, you start seeing more clearly. You notice whether her effort increases naturally. You notice whether she initiates. You notice whether she bridges the gap. And if she doesn't, you're not left guessing. You're left informed. That information is powerful because it protects your time and energy. You don't make a woman miss you by convincing her. You make her miss you by being someone worth noticing in absence. And that starts with you noticing yourself first. Noticing when you're over-investing. Noticing when you're seeking validation. Noticing when you're acting out of fear instead of confidence. That awareness is the pivot point. If you're recognizing that you've been too available in the past, don't beat yourself up. Growth isn't about shame, it's about adjustment. Comment if you've ever overextended yourself trying to hold someone's attention, not for sympathy, for accountability. Because accountability is what shifts behavior long term. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how to combine absence with presence so that when she does reach back out, you don't sabotage it by overcorrecting. Because making her miss you is one thing. Keeping that dynamic healthy once she leans back in is another. Chapter 3. There's a moment that usually happens quietly. She reaches back out, not with fireworks, not with some dramatic confession, just a message, a casual check-in, maybe a light joke, maybe something that looks neutral on the surface, but carries weight underneath it. And this is where most men ruin everything they just built, because the second she leans back in, the anxiety resurfaces, the urge to close the gap, the urge to secure the dynamic, the urge to move things back to constant contact. And if you give in to that urge immediately, you erase the contrast that made her miss you in the first place. The rhythm goes right back to what it was, over-available, predictable, easy to deprioritize. When she re-engages, you don't reward it with intensity. You reward it with steadiness. You stay calm. You match the energy without amplifying it. If she texts, you respond when it fits your schedule. If she suggests meeting, you agree if it aligns with your life. Not because you're playing it cool, because you actually are cool. There's a difference between acting unbothered and being grounded. You have to understand this part deeply. Missing you was triggered by contrast. If you eliminate that contrast immediately, the dynamic resets. But if you maintain your rhythm, maintain your structure, maintain your internal center, something different happens. She starts realizing that access to you is connected to effort, not manipulation, alignment. You're not punishing her for pulling away. You're not making her earn forgiveness. You're simply operating at a standard. When effort is present, you reciprocate. When effort fades, you reduce access. That clarity feels stable. Stability feels safe. Safety combined with unpredictability is what keeps attraction alive. Too much safety without unpredictability turns into boredom. Too much unpredictability without safety turns into chaos. The balance is where power sits. Most men think once she comes back, they've won. That mindset is dangerous. You didn't win anything. You realign the dynamic. If you treat her return like validation, you'll start overinvesting again. And overinvestment without reciprocity is the beginning of the same pattern repeating. Instead, observe. Is her effort consistent now? Is she initiating? Is she making time? Is she closing the space voluntarily? You don't interrogate these things, you notice them. And if they're there, you lean in gradually. Not all at once. Gradually. You let the momentum build naturally instead of forcing it forward. There's a calm power in not reacting emotionally to her return. When you stay centered, she feels it. She senses that you're not desperate for the connection, you're open to it. And openness without desperation feels strong. That strength makes her invest further because she knows she's not holding all the leverage anymore. You might remember times when you gave someone another chance and immediately resumed old habits. Texting constantly, making yourself fully available, prioritizing them before they've demonstrated consistency. And slowly, you felt the same imbalance creep back in. That's not because she's incapable of change. It's because you abandoned the structure that created respect. When you keep your structure intact, something subtle shifts. She doesn't feel like she can test boundaries endlessly. She doesn't feel like she can drift without consequence. Not because you threatened her, because you showed through action that your energy moves where it's valued. There's also a deeper realization here. Making her miss you isn't about controlling her feelings. It's about protecting your own energy. When you stop chasing, you regain perspective. When you maintain that perspective, even after she returns, you protect yourself from emotional whiplash. That protection allows you to engage without losing center. And here's the part most men don't like hearing. Sometimes she comes back just to see if she still can. Sometimes she tests the access. If you collapse into overavailability immediately, she confirms that nothing changed. But if you stay steady, she either adjusts upward or drifts permanently. Either outcome is clarity, and clarity is better than temporary validation. This isn't about ego, it's about rhythm. Healthy attraction has rhythm. It breathes, it expands and contracts. When you smother it with constant reassurance, it suffocates. When you abandon it completely, it dies. But when you allow space and return with composure, it strengthens. If you're seeing how this dynamic has played out in your life before, pause and share this with someone who always gets excited too quickly when she comes back. Not as criticism, as perspective. Because perspective is what keeps you from repeating cycles. In the final chapter, we'll bring this full circle and talk about why the real goal isn't making any woman miss you. It's becoming the kind of man whose absence naturally registers without effort, and whose presence feels intentional instead of automatic. Chapter 4. At some point, if you're paying attention, you start to realize that the real power in all of this isn't in making her miss you. It's in becoming someone whose absence actually matters. There's a difference. One is a tactic. The other is a transformation. And if you chase the tactic without building the foundation, you'll always feel like you're performing instead of living. You can make a woman react. You can trigger curiosity. You can create space that pulls her attention back. But if underneath that you're still anxious, still waiting, still measuring your worth by her response, the cycle never really ends. You'll keep trying to manage perception instead of strengthening identity. And perception without identity is fragile. It cracks the moment things feel uncertain again. The men who are naturally missed aren't dramatic. They're not loud. They're not constantly broadcasting their value. They just live in a way that isn't easily replaceable. They have depth, structure, momentum. When they pull back, it isn't a game. It's a reflection of their standards. And because their presence was steady and grounded to begin with, the contrast hits harder. Think about this honestly. If you disappeared from her life right now, what would she actually miss? Your constant texts, your reassurance, your availability? Or would she miss your direction, your humor, your calm presence, your consistency? The answer to that question tells you more about where you need to grow than any strategy ever could. Making her miss you isn't about vanishing. It's about not overextending yourself to fill every silence. It's about not explaining your value repeatedly. It's about not chasing clarity when behavior already gave you the answer. When you stop doing those things, something shifts inside you first. You feel lighter, less reactive, less attached to outcomes. That internal shift is what changes everything externally. And here's the part that takes maturity to accept. Not every woman will miss you. Not every connection will circle back. Sometimes you step back and she keeps walking. That's not failure. That's alignment revealing itself. The mistake most men make is trying to be unforgettable to everyone. The real goal is to be unforgettable to the right ones. When you operate from that understanding, your energy changes. You stop trying to control reactions. You focus on maintaining standards. You stop thinking, how do I get her to think about me? And start thinking, does this connection actually meet what I value? That shift alone removes desperation from your presence. And desperation is the fastest way to kill attraction. You don't need dramatic exits. You don't need social media stunts. You don't need cryptic messages. You need consistency. When she pulls away, you don't argue. You don't plead. You adjust. When she leans back in, you don't overcorrect. You stay steady. That steadiness communicates more powerfully than any speech ever could. There's a calm that comes from knowing you don't have to force yourself into someone's life to matter. When you truly believe that, your absence feels different. It doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like consequence, not in a punishing way, in a natural way. You didn't disappear. You simply stopped over-investing where reciprocity wasn't present. You might be realizing now that the times you were most missed were the times you were least focused on being missed. When you were busy, focused, engaged with your own path. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. People miss energy that feels self-contained and purposeful. They don't miss energy that feels attached and dependent. If this entire video has felt less like a trick and more like a mirror, that's intentional. Because the real work isn't manipulating someone's emotions. It's strengthening your own foundation. When your foundation is strong, absence becomes powerful automatically, not because you calculated it, because it's real. So before you try to make any woman miss you, ask yourself if you're someone worth missing beyond attention. Are you building something, growing, becoming more grounded? If you focus on that, the dynamic changes without you forcing it. And when she does think about you, it won't be because you engineered it. It'll be because your presence had weight. If this helped you reframe how you've been handling distance, hit like. If you've ever chased instead of centered yourself, comment something simple. Not for validation, for awareness. And if you're ready to move differently from here on out, subscribe. Because becoming the kind of man whose absence registers isn't about tricks. It's about evolution.